Big round of applause for Inessa. Welcome back. Have you had a good night's sleep? Why are you here then? Only one night out of 7. Not a great batting average. Okay. Welcome back. It's so nice to have you here. To spend another evening of getting well, healthy, relaxed, being able to be refreshed for the next 7 days. Spiritgrow is primarily concerned with the spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional welfare of all of us. That sounds like the totality of what life is about, and that's absolutely true. We strongly believe that wellness is a matter of training and discipline. No matter what the genetic makeup, we have the capacity through repetitive practice to change poor habits that we may have slid into without actually realizing it as such, but find ourselves unable to sleep, not eating well, stressed and the like. All these things can be undone if you redo them. So you become the sculptor of your own piece of art, which is you. So tonight we're going to continue that journey. And the first part of the journey is the morning after the night before. And therefore, to help us to make sure that the night before till this morning has been as it should be, Dr. Gelbart.
Thank you. All right, now I can see quite a few new faces tonight, so I'll just reintroduce myself again. My name is Jake. I'm a chiropractor. I work right around the corner from Spiritgrow here. And Laibl, I wanted to thank you again for inviting me along, because so far these talks have been absolutely amazing. All the speakers have been fantastic. And basically, the reason that I'm talking about sleep over these 3 nights is really because it is such a common problem that I see in many patients that come to me. I would say at least half sleep is either directly or indirectly related to the reason that they're coming to see me. So I see a lot of patients with headaches, neck pain, back pain, they're stressed. They've got a whole range of symptoms from pain to not being able to walk properly, a whole different host of things that I see people for. And one of the things that comes up time and time again is that quite often these people are not getting a good quality of sleep. And if you can't get a good quality of sleep, you're going to be unable to heal properly. Now, Laibl, very interesting that you noted that a lot of what can contribute to health ailments is bad habits, because that's precisely what I'm going to be speaking about tonight. So I broke up this talk into 3 parts. The first part that we did was all on the best timing to get a good quality of sleep. And if anyone wants a recap that wasn't able to attend that first week, I do invite you to come up at the end if you'd like to speak with me, just to get a bit of information about what you may have missed. There are notes that were available to be taken home as well. And really what I wanted to cover tonight was preparation and habits. So as we cover these subjects, I don't want you to necessarily think that what you're currently doing now is a bad habit, because it might be right for you at the moment. But what I do want you to do is take away from this afternoon what may be a better habit to adopt. And what I'll say going into this is that I don't think there's anything that I'm about to say that's particularly revolutionary. I don't think any of you are going to say that you haven't heard this kind of stuff before, but I can guarantee you that if all of you were doing everything that I'm about to cover, you would probably be a lot better off. So all of these things are easy in theory, but a bit harder when it comes to practice. And I definitely see a few heads nodding around the room, and I'm sure I'm going to continue to see them nod as I speak. So let's delve into one of the first and most topical for tonight, because we've got Dr. Stephen speaking afterwards, and that is how diet plays a role in our sleep. So I think that it's pretty safe to say that we all know that we should be eating as well as possible. And if you'd really like to dive a little deeper into what you should and shouldn't be eating, listen to Stephen speak later. He's the last speaker. But I wanted to cover, beyond just eating, you know, a healthy, well-balanced diet, I wanted to cover a few specifics that can really make or break your ability to sleep. The first is not to eat a huge meal before bedtime. You know, massive plate of food, especially if it's loaded with carbohydrates. As basically the body's digestive process for about an hour or so, it actually interrupts your body's normal circadian sleep rhythms and your ability to get to sleep. So you'll probably go to sleep feeling pretty full, and as a result be pretty uncomfortable, and your quality of sleep is not going to be as good as a result of that. Reducing fluid intake before bedtime is also very important. The most common reason for this is it's going to make you want to go to the toilet a lot more. So if you're prone to getting up throughout the night for number one or number twos, try and reduce your fluid intake before bedtime. So it's a very, very easy tip to do. And then the last point that I really wanted to drive home is to avoid as many stimulants as possible before going to bed. Now, when I say stimulants, I mean any kind of a food that's either going to be really high in sugar, really high in caffeine, or in the case of cigarettes, really high in nicotine. And alcohol isn't a stimulant, but it's also a problem, and I'll dive into that and why that's the case in a second. But basically, I think it's all safe to say that, you know, all of us know that probably if we have a big espresso before bed or a big, you know, long black, we're probably not going to be able to get a good night's sleep. But what a lot of people I find forget is that caffeine is not simply just found in coffee. Caffeine is found in a whole range of different beverages and certainly some medications as well, which they might sneak caffeine into without you being 100% aware. I've got a very funny funny story of a friend that found that out the very hard way in Bali, where he found out that they snuck caffeine into Panadol. He didn't sleep for like 2 days. He laughed about it afterwards, but it wasn't good at the time. Caffeine is found in a lot of teas, including most green teas. So a lot of times there's this sort of like all good intentions to, you know, relax and unwind with a nice big cuppa at night. And the ritual of making a tea is often very relaxing. But what it ends up doing is just sending a whole lot of caffeine to the brain, which is a stimulant, and it does nothing but keep you up. It's also worth noting that caffeine has a half-life of around 8 hours or so. So what that means is that caffeine is still pretty much half in your system and having half of its effect about 8 hours after drinking it. So what that means is really, if you've absolutely got to have that afternoon coffee, 2 p.m. should be like your absolute latest and not anywhere after that. Cigarettes, of course, well, we know cigarettes are bad for a whole host of things that I could do another 3-part series on, but I won't go into that. But alcohol is one that often confuses people because for sure, if you drink half a bottle of whiskey, you're going to go to sleep. We all agree, right? It'll completely knock you out. We've all been there and done it. But the fact of the matter is there's a big difference between going to sleep and passing out. And the four cycles of sleep completely disrupted when you pass out, and anyone that's woken up with a hangover the next morning will know that they don't exactly feel very well rested as a result. I find that this tip comes in particularly handy for those that are poor flyers. Anyone not enjoy flying here? Put your hands up. Yeah, I think no one enjoys flying. Everyone can put their hands up. But I see so often patients, and this really ties into what I'm seeing with a lot of people with neck pain and back pain. They hate flying so much that they just want to get on that plane and take advantage of the free drink cart, get hammered, put themselves to sleep, make it, yeah, see, I'm seeing the nodding heads as I go around the room, and for the whole flight. And sure enough, it's going to do that, but you're going to wake up so jet lagged and so tired that it's not going to have been worth it at all going in. So yeah, really something to note. The next thing that I wanted to speak about, which is really important, is lighting. So basically, our bodies have this really neat mechanism built in that lets us know the difference between daytime and nighttime. And it's all based on the amount of white light that enters our eyes from the glowing orb in the sky that is the sun. And although the sun looks kind of yellow if you look at it, it's actually made up of pure white light. And what this does is as the sun starts to go down and it starts to set and it becomes twilight, that optical signal from the eye enters the brain and tells the brain to start initiating, just like a launch pad, starts flicking the switches of what needs to do, what the brain needs to do in order to start relaxing and go to sleep. Anyone here ever been camping where you're out in the middle of nowhere with really no external light source but the sun and the moon? Anyone ever done that? Yeah? Most of us have. Did you find that when you were camping, it was like 9 p.m. but it felt like 3 in the morning, like you'd been up for ages because you were so tired? Now, was that just the hike that exhausted you? Well, a lot of it was to do with the circadian rhythms. When you're out in the middle of nowhere, you don't have a lot of artificial lighting around, and your brain relies purely on the natural cues from the environment to tell it basically what the time is and when you should be going to bed. And this is just sort of a mechanism that we all have built into us. With the advent of modern technology and electricity, we, of course, can light anything we want with as much power as we want. And this starts to become a problem when the light is as white as the sun is. So white lighting is great if you want to be able to pay attention to something. This is why you'll find it a lot in kitchens or in workshop environments, in retail outlets where they want you to be awake as possible. Because the white light that comes from a fluoro tube or an LED light is on the same wavelength as that comes from the sun. So it wires your brain into being awake. And what this does is if we're surrounded by it in the hours leading up to bedtime, our brain, the conscious part of our brain knows, right, you should be going to bed. The unconscious part of the brain's like, I didn't get the memo. Like, when did this happen? And so a very easy way to combat this, fortunately, is to go for and opt for some warmer lighting. So if you've ever wondered what the difference is, apart from just aesthetics, when you're at Bunnings or Penn's down the road between the more yellow bulbs and the white bulbs, that's absolutely what it's for. And in your bedroom, you should only ever have yellow light. Pretty much every room in your house, except maybe the kitchen where you want to be paying particular attention, should be lit with a warm light bulb instead. And that's a very, very easy thing that you can do if you happen to be living surrounded by neon tubes. I'm not sure what you have in your house at the moment, but it'd be worth paying attention. And if there's too many white lights, replace them with yellow. Now, this also includes, it goes beyond just light bulbs, this also includes electronic devices. Who goes to bed sleeping next to their phone? Liars, all of you. Who has a TV in their bedroom? Yeah, I think half the people aren't putting their hands up. Screens with LEDs and fluoro tubes and things built in emit that exact same white wavelength of light. Things like smart devices, laptops, tablets, which I spoke about in the last health talk, which really shouldn't be in the bedroom anyway, because the bedroom should be used for sleeping and intimacy only. They have their own problems beyond just the light, because they're a very big stimulus for the brain, especially where we're messaging someone, or we're doing our emails, or we're responding to the boss's email at 11 o'clock at night, even though it's well past work hours. Or simply watching a show that's very exciting, or a YouTube show, or whatever it is that's very mentally stimulating and can detract from our ability to go to sleep. Ideally, no television in the bedroom. Just get rid of it. If you want to do something that will instantly improve your sleep, and this is a very easy experiment to do, take the charging station of your phone out of the bedroom, put it in like the kitchen or something, and while you're asleep, just leave the phone charge outside, okay? If it's an emergency, I guarantee you someone will find a way to contact you, okay? But what it does is the distraction is not going to be there, the mental stimulation is not going to be there, and you're not going to get that trickery from the white light telling your brain that it's still daytime. If you absolutely must have a phone, because I understand that, look, this is a big thing for some people to give up. If you absolutely must, or let's say you live in a share house and the television just has to be in your room, most modern devices these days will have a nighttime mode built in, which will make the screen appear more yellow. And what that does is it filters out a lot of the white light, so only the yellow light is left, and as a result, our bodies tend to get the message that the sun's going down and it'll be time to go to bed. So at the very least, give that one a shot, because that's a very, very easy thing to do. Turn nighttime mode on your phone, or on Samsung they call it a yellow filter. And it'll really help, I promise you, in terms of your ability to go to bed. Another tip is simply to get some sunshine. And this really applies during the day. How many of us right now work in an office building or something where there's not very much outside light? Yep, so very, very common problem. Again, it's that same issue. When we're not getting that sunlight, our brain isn't getting the messages that it needs to tell us when to be awake and when to go to sleep. And in today's society, what tends to happen is we build a work environment with as little outside stimulus as possible so that we can work as efficiently as possible. Thank you, Laibl. And as a result, what tends to happen is we have no clue what's going on outside. This is even worse in winter when it's too cold to be outside. We don't want to be outside in the first place. We get no sun. So a very simple way to remedy this is to go for a half-an-hour walk on your lunch break, soak up as much sunshine. Even if it's cloudy, the sun is still out there, it's still going to work. And that's just going to help reset your body clock and let you know exactly what's going on. Another one, which David will be covering a little later this afternoon, is exercise. Regular exercise helps in your ability to go to sleep. National Sleep Foundation found that exercise in the afternoon can improve sleep in the evening. And basically, exercise during the day helps you fall asleep with less trouble. Again, it's due to the way that the body releases hormones and stress hormones as a response to physical activity, but it will help you go to sleep, and multiple studies have found this. Obviously, don't do it right before bed. I wouldn't do a 42K marathon and then try to go to sleep straight away. It's probably not going to be too successful. But, you know, sometime in the evening, you know, like when you get home from work, a few hours before you go to bed, for sure, half an hour to an hour of moderate to intense exercise will most likely help. And then lastly, this one's a bit of a no-brainer. It's to develop a relaxing routine if you don't have one already. And this can really include anything that you personally find relaxing. I've got 3 bullet points up there, such as meditation, which Menachem, you'll be covering a bit later, reading a book, having a warm bath. Really, whatever you find relaxing, do it before bed so that your body gets the message that it's time to start shutting down. That's part 2 all finished. If anyone, like I said, wants to chat about anything after, I'm staying back. Feel free to come to me after the show with any questions, queries, whatever you have. And thanks for listening to part 2. Stay tuned for part 3, because personally I think it's the one that you can get the most out of. Thank you very much.
That was terrific. Thank you so much. Jake works at the Caulfield Family Chiropractic and Massage Centre just around the corner, 128 Hawthorne Road. Well worth a visit, perhaps. More than the 15 minutes we give him here. Exercise, fitness. We make wonderful decisions. Tomorrow I'll start, or the next week I start. I do 1 week of exercise, and suddenly there's a part of the body that sort of goes wrong. In other words, I hurt my foot, and it sets it back, and I may not get back to it. So preventative mechanisms to ensure that you have longevity in exercise is very important. And that may be an aspect of what we learned tonight from Dave. Thank you very much, Dave Gelbart.
Okay, session 2. The best types of exercises to do. Welcome, everybody. So I enjoyed last week, and I hope you all took something out of it, for those of you that were here. I got some real enthusiastic responses immediately after the talk. One gentleman came up to me, I think he's here again, and he approached me with his business card, and I thought, oh, that's fantastic, somebody's really interested in what I do. He's a presentation coach. So, Dr. Gary, I'm not sure if you're here, but I will be seeing you. I was out of town for the first few days. There you are. I was out of town for the first few days this week, so I couldn't make that appointment, but I will make it with you, I promise. Okay, so last week we spoke about priorities and also the 5 pillars of health that I like to talk about. Sleep, diet, stress, toxins, and exercise, which we're going to cover today in a bit more detail. Today I'm going to talk about the best types and a little bit about how to do it. But before we get into it, we're going to have to surrender a little bit of time in our week, and we're going to have to surrender some old beliefs that we might have inside of our minds about exercise and training, and also we might have to surrender some new beliefs and some new research that gets printed and reported very, very often. Some inner beliefs that we might have to surrender is, I'm too old for this, I'm too injured, and some research that gets reported very often talk about exercising for 3 minutes at a time at very, very high intensity, 3 times a week, so 9 minutes a week, 8 seconds on, 12 seconds off. You might have read examples of these, and yes, they probably do work. There is probably science that backs that up, but I come from a little bit of a different point of view. There's 2 types of exercise that I would recommend to the general population who are just trying to get into shape, stay into shape, or improve their health and fitness through exercise. The first one's low. There's a long title here, so I'll go slowly if you want to take some notes. I'm going to define each part of it. So low impact is the first part. So low impact is really, really important for the type of clients that I work with, because a lot of them do have joint injuries or have had joint injuries in the past. So low impact heart rate based training. I work a lot with heart rate, making sure that people are exercising at the best intensity. Not too high, not too low, but right in the hitting zone. And I use devices to measure that, which I'll talk about tonight. And interval, rest, recover. Work hard, recover. Work hard, recover. And cardiovascular means heart rate based again. The second type is resistance based training. So you can see a few little pieces of equipment here. And I'm going to, if we have time, I'm going to show you a few examples of how to use them. So basically, heart rate based training and resistance training are the 2 most effective and useful types of training that I work with my clients every day. By the way, that time that we need to surrender, I mentioned last week 150 to 200 minutes per week. Okay, that's what I'm recommending. But if that sounds like a hell of a lot of time, it probably represents 1.5 to 2% of your total week. Yeah. Now, I know that you're going to be asleep for a lot of those hours, for those 168 hours in a week. If you're getting 7 or 8 hours sleep a night, you can do the maths and work out that there's about 110 hours left. So we're looking for about 2 and a bit of those hours devoted to exercising. Okay. And I personally think that practicing exercise daily is the best. And in the morning or through the day, not too late, as Dr. Jake recommended, is the best. The morning is practically the best time because you're less likely to be interrupted there. Okay? As the day goes on, we get busier and busier. Things come up, emergencies come up every now and then that completely can disrupt our exercise program. Okay? Physiologically, as long as you get it done, late at night is not a good idea because it's going to disrupt your sleep. But as long as it does get done, then you can give yourself a tick. But I prefer the morning. Plus, the immediate benefits that you get from exercise will last you all day long. Okay, so why not do it early? Why not have the energy and the things that I'm about to talk about all day long? Daily is a better idea because exercising in your body is a little bit like an elastic band. Okay, I didn't bring this in to show you this example, but if I want to, this is an elastic band, it's a pretty strong one, right? Now this is going to, if I keep this locked in a cupboard, this is going to stay the same shape and the same strength for its whole life. But if every day, and this is one of the exercises I wanted to show you, if every day I get in here, now just using this as a bit of an example, the elastic band is the body here, I'm the user. So if I give 25 of these every day, eventually this thing's going to change shape. It's going to get looser. It's the opposite of what we want with our body. We want our bodies to actually get tighter and stronger. But this is going to get weaker and looser. But if I shove it in the cupboard and I pull it out once a month, it's going to stay the same. All right? So I think our muscles in our body are a lot like that. If we give them a shake up every day, we're a better chance of getting a bit of a change in there, whether it be shape, fitness, strength, whatever it is we're trying to do. Also, I think that if you practice exercise daily, you're more likely to continue because it's just like everything else. It's a routine, okay? Once you miss a day or two, you're out of practice, you're out of routine, and you're more likely to drop off and get yourself into a slump where all of a sudden a week, 2 weeks, a month have gone by and you haven't exercised properly. Is this still working? Good. So let's say I had I'm just going to run through, I like doing this, I probably did it last week, but let's say I had a little jar of tablets here that sort of gave you all these benefits. Energy through the day, naturally, that burnt calories rather than added calories, all in this pill. Imagine this imaginary little tub of pills I've got here. You kept calmer under pressure, but it wasn't a mind-altering drug either. It made you feel, look and act younger without having to have cosmetic surgery. Helped you think more clearly and more effectively. Helped play a role in preventing many cancers and other serious illnesses, which you know I don't like talking about those. I like talking about the good news and the fun stuff, not the nasty stuff that exercise can help prevent many years down the track. I like talking about what exercise can do for you today, tomorrow. If it helped build muscle, become stronger, burn calories, lose weight, be leaner, more supple, more toned, and reduced your waist girth, which is a big marker for diabetes. If it helped you enjoy day-to-day recreational activities, reduced back pain, helped relieve other musculoskeletal injuries. If it helped you sleep better, would you take it every day? You would. So exercise can provide you with all those things. So why not do a little bit every day? So I'm recommending 150 to 200 minutes a week, minimum 3 sessions a week. So let's say I'm not going to do it. Let's say you're one of those people, I'm just not going to exercise every day. Every second day is fine, but you just got to go for a little bit longer. Okay, you can make up time. You don't have to be perfect. Remember last week we gave ourselves scores in areas, and we're not aiming for 10 out of 10 here. We're aiming for a good solid 7, 7.5 out of 10. Okay? So if you miss a day, just do double the next day. You wouldn't want to put 3 sessions together. That could get a bit long. Okay, so let's define what low-impact heart rate-based interval cardiovascular exercise looks like in a little bit more detail. Okay, so let's start with outdoor training. Let's say you're the kind of person, you're not going to go near a gym. You don't want to go anywhere near a person like me or in the place that I work. I completely understand. You can do this very, very effectively outdoors. So I get asked a lot about walking. A couple of people last week asked me about walking and the benefits of walking. And walking can be very, very effective, or it can be next to useless if you really want to make drastic changes to your body, that is. In terms of a recreational activity and going and getting some fresh air, wonderful. But if you want to make big changes to your fitness and your body shape, flat walking in the streets of Caulfield where there's very few hills, or if there are any, they don't go for very long, you're not going to get too far. So I'm sort of recommending walking with short spikes of elevated bursts of heart rate-based training. And there's lots of examples of those. There's skipping. Okay, I'm not going to do any. I've got too many things in my pockets and I've got my big solid boots. All right, no, I won't. Maybe later. There's jogging if your joints are in good condition. There's step-ups on low stairs, which you can find everywhere. There's stair climbing at Caulfield Park, at least at the far end where the kids' equipment is. There's all sorts of other activities like squats that you can do with no equipment, just to get a small elevated spike in heart rate. And while we're talking about heart rate, the kind of heart rate that you're aiming for is 180 minus your age. Okay, so that should be your baseline intensity with a few bursts of a little bit higher than that. Okay, so if you're 60 years old, you would want to average about 120, 125 beats per minute with a few spikes into the mid-130s, 140s. They don't have to go for too long. They only have to go for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and then you continue walking again. If you're going to invest in a fitness tracker, okay, I said I'd talk about those. They're a really good idea. I've got one. I've had one for years. I've always used them. But the one or the two features that they must have, if you're going to go and buy one, you don't need to get the top of the range one. It must have live heart rate, so it must show you what your heart rate is now, okay, while I'm walking back and forth. The best ones to use, I find, are the ones that do come with the chest strap. The ones that read through the wrist, they work. They're getting better, but they're not as good as the old-fashioned chest strap ones. And then at the end of that workout, it's got to show you your average heart rate. What your heart rate averaged for the entire workout, and that's where you want your 180 minus your age. Okay? So that's pretty specific stuff, but pretty easy to achieve. Okay? So in terms of indoor, let's talk about walking indoor now, okay? Because I did an experiment in my gym which was really, really interesting. I wanted to find out what activity, in my gym I've got treadmills, I've got cross trainers, you know those big ugly machines with the arms and the pedals that scare the hell out of people. There's exercise bikes, there's rowing machines, there's seated grinders, which are really handy because if you've got lower back, lower limb injuries, it's like a bike for your upper body. You sit on a chair and there's pedals for your arms. People don't normally last too long on those, but they're still very, very effective, especially for people with injuries. So we did the experiment. We wanted to find out which machine burnt the most calories, which was the most effective. And the other question that we wanted to know was which one was the most tolerable, which one was the least painful. Turns out it was the same machine. And it was walking on the treadmill, up an incline, not too high, maybe 5, 6 degrees, wearing a vest with some weight in it. Now, when I say some weight, I'm talking about the vest holds 20, but I was putting 10 or 10 kilo in, just little sort of metal, what do you call it? Little metal, they look like sort of bullets. You know? Sorry? Yeah, that's right. Just metal deposits, and you put them in, and you put the jacket on, and it weighs a little bit, but it feels pretty comfortable. You feel like you're not really wearing anything. But we found that the highest rate of calorie burning and the most tolerable was uphill walking with a weights vest on. Rowing was very uncomfortable for people. Very effective, not as high calorie burning as what walking was, but a lot of people could only really do that for 2 or 3 minutes at a time, and then they needed a break. Walking, we can do. We can do for 30, 40 minutes. So the one take home, if you take one thing out of tonight, I want you to take home the distinction between walking in Caulfield at a moderate pace where it's flat, where there aren't many hills, which might get you to 180 minus about 100, okay? Compared to walking on an incline machine wearing a weights pack, which will easily get you to your desired heart rate, and you can do it for a good 25 minutes per day without really being in too much discomfort. Thank you. Okay, other ways of, is that 2 minutes to go? Yep. Other ways of, it was the bell. Yeah. I've done a lot of boxing in my time, and often you hear the bell, but you don't hear the bell. Yeah. Other ways of achieving your time is to just do things that you enjoy. I'm going to just give 2. I've got a few examples here, but I'm only going to give 2. Who's heard of cardio tennis? Okay, it's a tennis program that has morphed into a fitness workout. So I've seen it. I haven't actually done it myself, even though I play a lot of tennis. And it's a workout designed around tennis. Now, that's the best sort of stuff to do because they've taken an activity that you already enjoy and they've morphed it into really, really effective cardio where non-stop, but truth is you're running around hitting tennis balls all the time, having the time of your life if you enjoy those sorts of sports. Anybody here, hand up quickly, who rides on the road, those long distances on Sunday mornings with the Lycra? Anybody here do that? Those guys and ladies have it really, they've got the jackpot there, as long as they don't get hit and fall over and get hurt badly, because they're doing exactly low impact, they're not straining their joints, they're in their heart rate for a very long time. They can almost do all of their minutes in one session for the week. However, you still want to be doing 2 or 3 sessions a week, not just one. Okay, let's quickly cover resistance training. Or, I think I'm going to save that for next week. All right? I'll save that for next week. I'll bring my goodies with me then. But just to finish off, let's surrender some time to devote to exercising properly and effectively. Invest in your health. Okay, it's really, really important to do. Don't try to be perfect, okay? You can start off easy and just enjoy the benefits. When you're out there exercising, I want you to link how you feel immediately after with what you've done. If you feel calmer, those whole list of benefits that I gave you, if you feel more relaxed, if you have more energy, if you're more calm and more focused at work and you exercise that morning, just make that link, because that's the thing that's going to inspire you to continue doing it day after day. Thank you very much, and see you next week.
Thanks very much, Dave. It seems strange, doesn't it, for an organisation that emphasises spirituality to have spent the first two discussions on physiological and physical aspects of being. But somehow intuitively we realise that the way we operate, our essential self, has to operate through the body as such. And if we don't have good equipment, the sound doesn't come through, the picture doesn't come through, or life doesn't come through. And therefore what we're doing is ensuring that the mechanism that the soul utilises to express itself is at optimal level. And that's why, as I mentioned last week, it's an absolute mitzvah to keep health and wellness at the forefront of our lives. And that's the rationale why we do have a very important emphasis on our physical well-being, realising that's not the be-all and end-all, but it's a pathway towards a much higher end. Last week, we had a 3D projection in the room of one Menachem Wolf. And although I rang the bell, he would not stop speaking. And that's because he was in Israel at the time. Today, I've gone one step further, and I've been able to ensure that the projection is very lifelike. So, Menachem, would you come and share meditation aspects of wellness with us?
So thanks to Israeli technology, I've got this unbelievable hologram tonight. Just make sure all technology is off for this part. Okay, so last week, I don't know what they played for you. I hope it's what I wanted. It was the last scene of Indiana Jones of the Last Crusade. Was that moment of bliss? So last week we explored this idea of surrendering based on the Sphira of Hod, which is the energy of humility. And humility not from a place of weakness, but humility from a place of strength, where one comes to accept. And accepting is actually a really, really hard thing. To ignore is a lot easier than to accept, which is why for most of our lives we'll run away from problems, but to actually turn around and face it is extremely hard. And it's not hard because of what's about to happen. It's the anticipation that's hard. Last night I gave a class and we spoke about I'm just mentioning this to acknowledge the few people who are in the room. I don't want them to think I just use the same spiel every night of the week to different crowds. But we spoke about the studies into pain. And the anticipation of pain is greater, the suffering that takes place in the anticipation of pain is greater than the experience of the pain itself. And conversely, when you are anticipating a holiday and you're looking forward to something positive, that 1 week, 2 weeks is actually a part of the holiday already, and there's actually some positive aspects that take place within the body just from anticipating something positive. So turning around to face a challenge is not as challenge. Once you've turned around, the challenge will not be as great as the challenge to turn around to face the challenge. And I'd like to focus on that tonight as part of our in the lead up to our meditation, because you know how when things are going a bit off in life and your mind tells you you're about to die, or you're about to go bankrupt, or you're about to lose your dignity, and everything's going to be terrible, and it's all going to go kaput, and all those years of hard work, just like that, and you're going to be the laughing stock for the rest of your life. You ever have those moments? They happen. It doesn't mean it's real, but we think that. Things start getting out of control. So you start thinking, if it's out of control, how bad could it be? And when you start thinking about how bad it could be, that becomes the reality, which is why we start experiencing all the anxiety that's associated with the unknown, especially when the unknown relates to something negative. So you're waiting for a diagnosis, you're already writing your will. Maybe it's going to be okay. Or you have to go for surgery, you're already working out what's life going to be like in a wheelchair. Why? Because we start jumping a million guns. We start jumping a million steps, and it's not the reality. We've adopted one possible reality as our reality right now. In order to not do that, one has to hold themselves back. We have to hold back a part of ourselves that loves to race ahead. And if you're like me, so I weigh around, don't guess, I weigh around 90 kilos, give or take. Sometimes it's giving and sometimes I'm taking. I weigh 90 kilos. Do you know how much that urge weighs? The urge to jump the gun, the urge to already move forward with one's thinking. Do you know how much, if I could weigh that on a scale, do you know how much that weighs? 90 kilos. When you need to hold yourself back, you are holding back the full weight of yourself, the full thrust of yourself. So last week, I spoke about how meditation is very simple. It's the preparation to meditation that's very hard. Being in an enlightened space, easy. Once you're there. It's the getting there that's really hard. To reach a point of tranquility, easy. No, sorry. To be in a moment of tranquility, easy. To get to the point of tranquility, very hard. That's what we were talking about last week. That's what I was talking about last week. That idea of climbing a mountain is not the meditation. That's all part of the preparation. It's once you get to the top of the mountain that you're meditating. And what I said last week was that when people talk about meditation, what they're really talking about are the preparation points that take place before actually meditating. So all the breathing and all the sitting down and finding the 10 minutes or the 1 hour or the however long and all the drama associated with meditation, that's not meditation. It's not meditation. It's preparation. Just because that's what they're selling as meditation today and because you may have paid for it, that's not my problem. So they've sold you a lemon. It's not the first, it's not the last. See, it's nice to laugh at yourself. It's nice for me to laugh at you. That's why we stopped charging for meditation, because it wasn't legit. So what I'd like to do tonight is take you through a sequence that I would like you to practice at least one time this week. Now, the truth is I want you to do it every day. But there will be a moment this week in which you are experiencing stress or anxiety. And I don't just mean a flutter. I mean that sort of, you've lost your appetite in the moment, you're getting a bit schwitzy, your heart rate's gone all over the show. And at that moment, I want you to hear these words. Oh, it's time to sit down and meditate. And then you'll know it's the right moment if the other voice in your head says, oh, stop it, not now, not the nonsense now. We've got to work our way through this. If that's what your voice says, not the nonsense now, we've got to work our way through this, bingo, that's the time I want you to sit down and meditate. Because that's the real moment of surrender. When you give up trusting yourself and you take a moment to breathe and pause and you wait and see what will happen on the other side of that pause. We all know what's going to happen because we've all read the books. What happens on the other side? You address it more consciously, more deliberately, more wisely. Because having that pause, having that circuit breaker is actually the most magical thing you could do if you ever want to find a result or if you ever want to anchor yourself or you want to ground yourself and discover it's not as bad as it is. So if, God forbid, you're going to be in hospital this week and your mind starts going, what's life going to be like in a wheelchair? Or have I said all my goodbyes to everyone? You just stop, breathe, and then go for the procedure. Okay? Now, I'm not saying don't prepare for the future, but I am saying don't prepare for a tsunami every time it's windy outside. So this is the exercise. It's not going to be that dissimilar from last week, and that's because I remember when I first started teaching meditation here, it would have been in the first few months that I was teaching, a lady came up to me and she said, Menachem, I don't really like you as a teacher. And, early days, everyone says it's good, but you lock into the one negative and say, right, I'm going to listen to this person and live my whole life according to this piece of criticism. And she said, you're kind of repeating yourself. And I was like, yeah, I am. Better shake this up. Meditation's got to be entertaining, isn't it? It's meant to be hyper-stimulating. And so I remember my father said, don't listen to her. Stick to the rules. The rules are you repeat yourself. Meditation is an exercise. It's not like I'm going running one. Imagine you go to David and go, well, I'm sick of running. Let's do something else. Oh, this week we're rowing. This week we're riding. You got to get into some rhythm. Get some patterns going. You move from one thing to the next, but it's got to be within a proper context. So I am going to be repeating last week because the mind takes 30 days to train if you want to start seeing results. So if you just did this last week with me, 30 days, my friends, not once. So when you're ready, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to place your feet square on the ground. You can rest your hands in your lap. There's no right or wrong way to be seated. I just would like that your back is fairly supported, your neck is upright, and that your eyelids are gently closed, you're not squeezing. And before we even begin, we're going to begin by scanning our body and noticing how we feel. So what that means is I'd like you to bring your focus to your forehead and the top of your head. So notice your forehead. And I'd like you to slowly move your awareness, your consciousness through your body, starting at the top, moving down slowly, literally checking in with each body part and noticing, does it hurt? Is it tense? Is it loose? Is it relaxed? And just notice and move on. I don't want you to think about what's causing anything. I just want you to notice. There's no right or wrong way to breathe. And you might notice that there are aches and pains that you haven't really addressed at all today, and they've been niggling. Moving down your shoulders and arms, moving through your chest. Moving through your legs. And you're really building a mental picture of the state of this moment, of how you're feeling. I want you to notice now, if you've finished, begin to notice your emotions. What are the emotions you're experiencing right now? Happiness, sadness, anxiety, calm. What are the impulses at play right now? And I don't want you to think about why you're feeling that. I just want you to notice, what is the feeling? And you can ask yourself very gently, as you're sitting here, for someone who's sitting in a chair, should I be feeling much more than relaxed? And just accept this moment that you are sitting in a chair, in a room, protected from the elements. There is nothing hurting you in this moment. Your phone is not ringing in this moment. There is nothing taking place beyond your existence in this moment. And so there's no need for tension. There's no need for pain. There's no need for anxiety. In this moment, are you okay? And so now let's begin to breathe. I'd like you to breathe very deliberately by breathing in through your nose, filling your lungs, and once they're full, pausing, and then breathing out. All you need to do is focus on the breath work. Any thoughts that pop into your mind can come and go. We're just listening to the breathing. We're noticing the slow rise as you breathe in, and then the slow fall as you breathe out. Just breathing in and out. Any thoughts that come, let them go. We're not here to block them. Just breathing in and then out. Noticing the rise and the fall, hearing the inhale and the sound of the exhale. And what I'd like you to do is finish this round of the breath. And once you finish, I'd like you to scan your body one more time. Starting from the top of your head and moving slowly down, noticing, how's your body feeling now? Is there a heaviness and a relaxation? Have you loosened slightly? As you pass your stomach, I want you to notice how you feel. Are you calmer? Are you more relaxed? Has there been a drop in any nervousness? Has excitement dissipated? Are you more neutral? Finish the body scan. Come back to the feeling of your feet on the ground, your hands in your lap, the sounds of the room. In a moment, I'm going to invite you to open your eyes. When you feel ready, come all the way back and open your eyes. Okay. Raise your hand if you definitely feel more relaxed than you did 5 minutes ago. Okay. Who feels a little clearer in their head? Not stimulated, but that if I asked you to think now, you could sit back and think. Raise your hand if you felt a change between, you felt a difference between the first body scan and the last body scan. Raise your hand if there was a difference. All right, that's enough hands for me to say, yeah, I think this works. So, when you're having that anxious moment, There's nothing wrong with trying to solve it. Just try to solve it after we've done this, because this is going to put you into a more level playing field where you can analyze information better, you can also analyze yourself better, and you can reach a more optimal version of who you are. Now, even if you're not experiencing anxiety, doing this a few times a day does miracles, absolutely miracles. And here's a tip: do it before bed. Don't become aware of anything, just allow yourself to drift off. Money back guaranteed. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Menachem. He's very, very clever. He knows I'm not going to ring a bell during meditation or you'll all jump out of your skin. Well done. We're going to take a short break. Drinks are coming out. And during that time, can I invite the presenters to come for a few minutes to the meditation room? Thank you very much. We'll meet up very shortly. Get up and stretch. The recipe for the smoothie you're getting is coming up on screen. The next speaker needs very little introduction because he has a white beard and a beret and therefore gets away with anything he says. I'm speaking about kindfulness. We began last week and we spoke about the way that Hashem created the world with the primary tool being chesed, and that means the power to contribute and share and give. In other words, the whole cosmos is wired as a giving, living, sentient creature. And that includes Earth, planets, solar systems, and universes, and of course everything within, which in our instance we're talking about is human beings, you and I. Therefore, if we want to be in sync with the nature of creation, when we act magnanimously, when we act with kindness, the resultant feeling we have is one of elation or fulfilment or happiness. And that becomes the barometer of verification that we are in sync with creation. It just is. And I tested last week by indicating if you go back in your own personal history and locate moments of extreme happiness, even ecstasy, fulfillment of a higher order, there'll always be situations in context of relationship where you're giving, sharing, and contributing to a loved one. And therefore, let's accept for the purposes of this week that it's axiomatic that kindness is good. Whether you define good objectively as that what the Creator is telling us, or subjectively, I feel good when I'm acting kindly. Having said that, I want to talk today about the nature of the body, the state of the body, as a consequence of being kind. Because if there's consistency throughout all creation, it should mean that if we're doing the right thing, and in this instance, acting kindly, the result should be that even our physiological processes should create health and wellness. And guess what? That's exactly what the scientists tell us. Amongst many, Dr. David Hamilton, who wrote a very fine book which I urge you all to have a look at. It's called The 5 Side Effects of Kindness, a contemporary book. And he notes that being kind generates the kindness hormone called oxytocin. This has been tested and shown, of course. We're not making any of this up. And that happens to be the most major cardiovascular hormone at the very same time, which means that keeps the arteries clear. and in so doing lowers blood pressure and reducing the harmful free radicals that are generated throughout the body. Simply adopting a pattern of kind behavior affects, as I said last week, the chemistry of the body. And to this extent, we've been able to measure it and demonstrate it. That alone should be a great incentive. But it also testifies to the fact that being kind does work in terms of the totality of one's being. And of course, we know full well that high blood pressure and free radicals and inflammations which result from that are the main culprits for causing aging in ourselves. So kind people tend to be youthful. And unkind people, okay. In his research, he also notes that kindness seems to have an effect on the vagus nerve. That regulates the heartbeat and controls the relaxation response of the body. And that's why if you were to be conscious and mindful during the very act of kindfulness, you would also recognize yourself to be a much more relaxed individual, stress-free at the very time. You would say, yes, that's because of the chemistry I just talked about, but it's really the other way around. You caused that chemistry through your act of kindness. It's not that the chemistry makes us the way we are, we make the chemistry. Our attitudinal response changes the chemistry of the body. The way we choose to respond to the interpretation of a potentially stressful moment, but do so non-stressfully, changes the chemistry of the body. What the scientists are doing are measuring the effect, not the cause. Think about that. But, nevertheless, even measuring the effect means that effect is benefiting the body rather than causing it harm if we do otherwise. And then there are also, obviously, the psychological effects of practicing kindness, the kind of helper's high that's often referred to, that you feel really good. That's why you did experience that extreme sense of fulfilment in that singular moment back in your childhood when you actually experienced happiness and the context of that. And that's because in so doing, you also generate some other pieces of chemistry in the brain, the opiates, dopamine, for example. And therefore, by generating those, the resultant reading of that by your consciousness is happiness. So it's very, very interesting that certain behavioral patterns create processes in the body that become interpreted by us in terms of our fulfillment quotient. And high amongst those is kindness. So I'm hoping that in the few moments that I've shared those things with you, it gives you a sense that maybe we should make a greater effect, take some greater care, and I'm going to give you some more methodologies or hints on how to practice the coming week. I want you to be able this week, number one, to step up and help. Take initiatives. You see someone struggling in whatever shape or form is, carrying something on the street, having difficulty with their controlling their child, having some difficulty parking their car. Help them. Go up to the window and say, would you like me to park the car for you? Have you got the guts to say that? I mean, all they'll say is, no, don't be silly, I can do it myself. But that's their problem. You have done something that is, in terms of the cosmos, very much in alignment. Whether they have taken the queue line on is not your business. But more simpler kind of settings where you actually assist people in very ordinary little ways. So one person, one occasion this coming week. Another possibility, giving others the benefit of the doubt, something we're not very good at. Going back to the roadway, you know that driver that just cut you off? And what do? Suddenly your anger wells up. Why? No idea. Why does it well up? Because of your low self-esteem, obviously. That's the only reason. There's no reason to get angry about someone cutting you off other than you don't like someone doing things to you that you don't like. But if you were confident in yourself, self-assured, possessed the correct self-esteem, then you would give the benefit of the doubt. They're acting like that because they are under stress. They've got some sense of urgency. Rightly or wrongly is not for us to judge. But to be other-centered, that certainly is something that's within our capacity. And that makes a big difference to you as well as potentially the other person, because you become a model to the other person, which means another factor, the multiplier effect. When you model such behavior, it catches on, especially when it's natural. Third little hint for this week. Leave home a minute earlier, right? When we're rushing and we want to get into line, into the queue, etc., what happens is impatience starts to well up. The notion of being able to practice delayed gratification goes out the window. Practicing patience is an acceptance that the universe is telling you something. You weren't meant to be in front of that queue. You were meant to be at the back of the queue. You don't have to grab the moment. And if that doesn't work too easily for you, give yourself the rationale. Start early, a minute earlier. Hey, I've got another 60 seconds. That's fine. So these are little features and factors that we can utilize. I've got them in the notes, which we'll hand out at the end of the evening. But I want to just conclude with a couple of videos that will perhaps reinforce what I've said by way of conclusion. What would we do without David here?
The science of kindness. Matter of fact. Like most medical antidepressants, kindness stimulates the production of serotonin. Serotonin heals your wounds, calms you down, and makes you happy. The real kicker? Kindness boosts serotonin in the giver, the receiver, and everyone who witnesses it. Every act of kindness also spreads through 3 degrees of separation, and serotonin is just the beginning. You'll also produce more endorphins, the brain's natural painkiller. Endorphins are 3 times more effective than morphine, and they won't land you in jail. And if that's still not quite enough, being kind produces oxytocin in your system. Oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, promotes social bonding, exerts an immediate calming effect, increases trust and generosity, strengthens the immune system, and boosts virility. I guess they weren't joking when they said, being kind is a good thing. To top it all off, compassionate people also have 2 times the amount of DHEA, which slows down aging, and 23% less cortisol, the infamous stress hormone. With so many benefits, every act of kindness is a healthy one. It's a scientific fact.
And one more for good measure.
That sympathy is our strongest instinct.
Very impressively, scientists are starting to pinpoint really a network of neurons in the brain that helps us empathize.
Now we find when we feel compassion in humans, that part of the brain lights up. That part of the brain is connected to oxytocin networks. And we know oxytocin is this amazing neuropeptide that helps us empathize and be generous. That tells us that kindness is biological, and it's part of the human imperative or human nature. I think your question also is asking another question.
What we do here is we study emotions and what makes people happy, and part of that is based in feeling compassion and reading other people's emotions.
Or one of the things we learn is how even very small gestures of compassion and kindness, even those in the lab, really make you feel more satisfied, more content on just an everyday level.
We're starting to learn that as you practice kindness, it shifts your nervous system and you're healthier, right? That kindness and compassion may be as powerful a determinant of physical health as smoking. So we're in the Greater Good Science Center. And our Director of Strategic Partnerships, the inimitable Susan Fassberg.
Most places that research behavior are looking at what goes wrong between people, and we're looking at what goes right.
We're taking the science of compassion and altruism and getting it out to tens of thousands of people.
One of the most exciting messages for people is it's not just a question of how you're born. Are you born happy or are you born a certain way? That these are not only teachable skills but learnable skills.
When you really cultivate compassion, you really potentiate or activate a lot of the great emotions that make up the meaningful life.
I don't know if you picked up there a little comment. He said, even in the lab, we find the resultant change. In other words, fake it till you make it. Even if you are forcing yourself to be kind, it has the desired effect. Two ways. One, that too changes your body. And also, if you do it often enough, it becomes real. So that's that little section. We have one more presenter for this evening. And that presenter told us last week that fats are good for you. And some people were very querying of that statement. But then he went on and explained which fats are good for you. But the point that perhaps was made very, very dramatically is that fats are necessary. And that goes counter to many of the more recent decades of advice that we've been giving. But then the doctor who is speaking for us at the moment isn't your typical doctor. He actually looks into the science of it with great detailed eye. So I'm going to ask Dr. Stephen Dudakov to continue and to surprise us.
Okay. Right, can we hear me? Okay, good. So last week, just in quick summary, we spoke about what not to eat. And the idea was to reduce or eliminate sugar, to try to get rid of the inflammatory bad vegetable oils and margarine. So today I'm going to talk mostly on what to eat, and if the bell's kind to us, perhaps a little bit more of why. So what we've got here is the evolution of man. And it was a good story for a period of time, but something seems to have gone awry. And this sad picture is true because over 50% in America are overweight or obese, and that's true for Australia, and it's increasing similar kind of proportions even in the developed world, in the subcontinent, in India and in China. Something's going wrong. The story behind this, when I looked at this, I realized there's a lot more actually going on because there's an incredible story going on here. Something's happened to our food chain that's affected the human being. So I said in the promo video about tonight, I'd explain what's behind the low-carb, high-fat diet, what's behind the paleo diet, the 5-2 diet, these ways of eating. The thing about them, why they all work, is because they're anti-insulin. And insulin is the absolute key. We want to lower insulin and we want to gain insulin sensitivity. What's gone wrong with this person is if we checked his biochemistry, he would have high insulin and insulin resistance. Now, something happened going back about 10 to 12,000 years ago. Man did something he never did previously. He used to be a hunter-gatherer. Suddenly, he learned to plant seeds and to harvest them. And this has been described by some people as the greatest boon to mankind, but the worst bane to each and every human as an individual. It allowed us for the first time not to have to concentrate for everyone to look for food. But now we could live in cities. Only a few people had to worry about production of food. So those of us living in the cities could go to higher pursuits, the sciences, the arts, mathematics, astrology, astronomy, etc. And we were able to develop as a consequence. But what happened to our health? And there comes the bane. Because what's been shown is that from roughly pre-16,000 years ago to what happened about 6,000 years ago, over about a 10,000 year period, we lost about 15 centimetres of height. And our jaws changed because of what we changed eating. Why does everyone have to have their wisdom teeth removed now? What, we don't have the right sized skull? We actually don't. It's changed. And so for a lot of us, we have to remove the teeth because the jaw has become smaller because of the way we eat. And there's been more recent changes, which is even more, has continued to ongoing effect on our cells as individuals, biochemistry. So the thing about what I'd like you to do actually now is to, what can you eat on my way of eating? I want you to just visualize. I want you to think about this beautiful earth, incredible mountain range. And we're going to see the streams trickling down that mountain, forming rivers, emptying into mighty rivers, going into the seas, going into the oceans. And the thing is, if something swims in those oceans and seas and in the streams, you can eat it. And if things are walking over the land, then you can hunt them down, or you can gather them and grow them. You can eat it. And if it grows out of the ground and in the ground, you can eat it. And if it's flying over the seas and over the mountains, you can eat it. In other words, there's a lot being provided for us on this beautiful earth. This provides everything that we need. Okay. This is in a supermarket. The thing about this picture is it has produce from what's being grown. And you'll notice where it's situated against the wall. So when you eat my way, what we do is we shop the outside parts of the supermarket. Where are you going to find the fresh produce? What we don't do, where's the food? This is product. This has been made by man. It contains huge amounts of things that basically aren't good for us. Too much sugar, too much carbohydrate, too much processed oils, excessive amounts of things that have led to that fat man at the end of that last line. So next time you're in a supermarket, think about what you're actually buying. The only time you really need to go down an aisle is perhaps to buy the olive oil and to pick up the eggs. Okay? So let's talk about, again now, the macros. We've got protein. So when it comes to protein, what should we eat? Free-range eggs, grass-fed meat. Try and limit the processed meats, but it's not 100% excluded. Chicken to reduce the chicken. We'll get to that in a second. Fish to increase the amount of fish. And dairy, full fat, depending. So free-range eggs, it's been shown over normal eggs, contains a lot more omega-3s and better amounts of the protein for our body. Omega-3s is something that we should highly seek. Very good for our bodies, for the very important reason that omega-3 fats are very anti-inflammatory. That's important. Grass-fed meat. Again, we'll get to that later on the fat side, but an excellent source of nutrition. The protein, perfect for the body, and as well as that, well, we'll get to the fat side of the meat in a minute, but the thing about red meat is it is very energy dense. And what you eat or why you eat things depends what it is you want to gain from it. So is it because I want to lose weight, or is it because I have to control my diabetes, or is it just because I want to be healthier or live longer? There can be underlying reasons different for each of us. Food density, nutrition density can become an important factor. So if we eat food that is more dense with nutrition, you need less of it. Much easier to lose weight then. Limiting processed meats, again, because man's intervened and put a few chemicals into it. Chicken. The one problem with chicken is that it is not very nutritious. So yes, you can eat chicken, not a problem, and certainly make the chicken soup. And I would say don't scoop the fat off the top, leave it there. It's the best parts for most a lot of nutrition is going to be. And certainly you can eat chicken. I would definitely leave the skin on it. Okay, you want those fats that are in it. But as a meat, it is less nutrient dense than red meat or fish. Okay, when it comes to fish, there is an argument that you should have small rather than large, simply because of how man has affected his oceans, too many pollutants in the oceans, and therefore the bigger fish feed on the smaller fish. So you work your way up the chain, and consequently the biggest fish have eaten accumulation of the heavy metals. In the smaller fish, you're going to have less density of these heavy metals compared to the bigger ones. So that's why. But what you want to do is eat the fatty fish. So your sardines, your mackerels. And where are we? Yeah, so fatty fish, really good. Now dairy, again, not a problem with dairy. Again, depending on what your preferences are, what it is you like. If you were a paleo eater, you wouldn't eat dairy. You would eat fruit, though, in season. When someone eats low carb, high fat, we don't eat fruit as much except for berries, but we eat dairy. If a person's going on this diet for inflammation reasons, and that is one reason more and more that people are starting this diet, then you might want to cut back on dairy because it is something that's been shown to be pro-inflammatory. As for the protein, the amount of protein, very simple rule. Size of your palm. Very easy. If you want to be more technical, then you can work on 1 gram of protein per kilogram of weight. And that's a simple way of seeing it. So if you were 70 kilograms, you would want about 70 grams of protein, which is about a 250 gram steak. That's as much protein as you need in a day. Now, some people have done a lot of research into living longer, longevity diet, and they've determined the minimum amount that you can eat is basically what you should take in, minimize your protein because of some of the pathways it can stimulate in cells. You can get down to 0.6 of a milligram per kilogram of ideal body weight. If you're a bodybuilder, you'll need more, 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. So it does vary between those. By the way, all of this is in the handouts that you'll be receiving later today. Now, the fats. So the first point, as I said last week, saturated fat, you don't have to really worry about it. It's not the big bad bogey that everyone has said it is. I'm not saying go chase it, but if you consume it as part of your normal food, if there's a steak and it's got fat on it, I would eat it. No reason why not to. First of all, it's not all saturated fat. It's only half saturated fat. The other half's going to be polyunsaturated, and that's where you want free range cows, because those going on the rolling hills, eating the grass, they are going to have polyunsaturated fat as part of that other 50% in the fat. But if those cows have been stuck in a shed and force-fed on grains to make them fat, then that's going to not be the good fat. That's going to be omega-6s, not the omega-3s. The omega-6s are pro-inflammatory. So fats, the polyunsaturated, two kinds, omega-3s, omega-6s. They need to be roughly in balance. Ideal diet has roughly 1-to-1, 2-to-1 of the 6s to the 3s. The unfortunate thing with our modern diet is we have anywhere from 20 to 30 to 40 to 1 of the omega-6s to the omega-3s. And that's why you want to kick out the margarine, kick out the vegetable oils. There's a few other things I'll tell you later. And that's why you want to increase the omega-3s, which is your fishes, grass-fed cows, free-range eggs, a healthier, less inflammatory way of eating. And you monosaturated fats. These we really want to try and chase. Very good for you. Now it's been generally accepted. You actually go back to the 1980s and 1990s, it was anti all fats. Fats, no, couldn't have any of them. At least now they've agreed you can have the monounsaturated. Increase these, and that's in avocados, olive oils, macadamia nuts, 70% fat, mostly monosaturated, really good for you. Has other things in it as well, which help the body utilize the omega-3s. Pecan nuts, now Brazil nuts as well. I put them in there. Everyone should eat 4 Brazil nuts a day. Okay? An excellent food item, especially women after menopause, but men too have problems with osteoporosis. But women with osteoporosis, everyone here knows about calcium, vitamin D. There's more to that story. If you really want to look after your bones, yes, you need a good intake of calcium, which rather than tablets, if you can get it from dairy food, by all means do it through food. Usually our diet is not deficient of calcium. Vitamin D does have to be boosted, and you really do want to get those levels higher, and higher than that 50 cutoff where they say you're low. Ideally aim for 110 for ideal body health. But there's other things. There's vitamin K2, because calcium gets absorbed into the body by vitamin D, which gets it in. But then you're just flooding the calcium everywhere. What does K2 do? It's the policeman that tells it where to go. Don't go into soft tissues. No, go into the bone. You need to get that vitamin K2. But there's other nutrients we need. We need magnesium, boron, selenium. And you're going to find selenium and boron in the Brazil nuts. And that's why I say limited to 4, because we don't want an excess of selenium. You can get selenium poisoning. If you get a metallic taste in your mouth, that could be why. Excellent, excellent nutrition. So the fats, polyunsaturated, we talk about the omega-3s that we want to increase. So the sardines, salmon, ideally wild caught. Unfortunately, a lot of the salmon, the smoked salmon we see around, it's farmed salmon. And what do they feed it? Grains. It's not naturally caught. It doesn't quite have the true omega-3 richness that we'd like ideally from the salmon. Mackerel, tuna, etc. So tuna is one of the larger fish. If you've got a good source of zinc and you do exercise so that you sweat, and that way you can get heavy metals out of the body, you're unlikely to run into heavy metal problems like you can with mercury if you're eating tuna. But if you suffer any symptoms eating tuna, get it checked with your doctor. You can do a mercury test, very easy, in the blood. Seeds, the flax seeds and the chia seeds, excellent sources of omega-3s. It's a slightly different 3. So we have the omega-3s from meat, DHA and EPA, essential for the human body. Vegetable sources are a little bit different. They're AHA, and we can convert them to the 2 that we need, but extremely slowly. And that's one of the difficulties or problems that people who are vegetarian can run into. So it's a good source. We can use it. We can still burn it well for energy, and we can turn some of it into the 2 good kinds that our body needs. But it's something that vegetarians, vegans do need to be a bit careful of. And again, the grass-fed meat, because like I said, that half, the 50% that's not saturated, that's unsaturated, is going to be omega-3s, the anti-inflammatory fats, if they're grass-fed. Now, the omega-6s, we want to reduce. So no vegetable oils, the margarines, walnut. Now, when it comes to nuts, walnuts are a good nut for you, but again, I wouldn't stick to have more than 4 or so a day, because they are so rich in omega-6s. Pine nuts, pistachios, and pistachios you shouldn't have anyway because they're very high in carbs, especially cashews too. In our diet, they're a no-no. Yeah, there you go. All right, and the seeds, again, you can have seeds, but be a bit careful of sunflower and pumpkin. Again, very high in omega-6s. Almonds.
No
almonds
questions.
Sorry, but anyway. And almonds are good. They're okay. There's a couple of arguments against them because of what's in the skin, and it may have anti-nutrients. But look, they're good. A lot of good fibre. They're 10% carbohydrate, so you limit the quantity, maybe about 10, 14 or so a day. And I would bulk up more with macadamia. Okay, so the exercise for the week is basically quite simple: to eat a bit more fish. Okay, at least 3 times a week if you can. Yeah, change the nuts, stop the cashews, the pistachio and the hazelnuts, reduce the walnuts, eat your 4 Brazil nuts every day, and increase macadamia and pecans. Now, I'd just like to say, when we're talking about the exercise and talk about walking up a treadmill, I just want to say there are a thing called blue zones where people live to be excessively old. They get to their 100. There's one common factor in all the blue zones on Earth. They're all very hilly. So do your walking up the treadmill.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Can you imagine if you walked away from this series and practiced these 5 sets of insights that you've received tonight and did that for a couple of months? I guarantee you, each of you would be different people. And a couple of months out of a lifetime to experiment with is not too much. So when you collect the notes in the back as you walk out and practice this coming week, just picture yourself what you might be like in 2 months' time if you had the discipline and follow the practice. We look forward to having you next week for the 3rd and final session of this series. Have a good evening and sleep well.